The movie begins by introducing an old man named Bill. Bill has a hobby of hunting animals, and he is very rich, so that, even though he is old, Bill can easily have a beautiful young wife. His name is Isabel, but Isabel never lusts when dealing with her husband because her husband is too old. So Isabel secretly glances at her maid. If her husband is away hunting, this maid is named David. If David is doing his job, Isabel likes to deliberately approach David, so that David lusts with her. However, the day David was approached by Isabel, David did not really care about it, not because David was a good boy, but David was afraid of Bill, who was a hunter and also the husband of Isabel herself. One day, Bill, who realized that he was old, he also stated something to his wife. Bill asked if Isabel wanted to be invited to play by a man younger than him. Isabel loudly replied she was very willing. However, Isabel was afraid of Bill if she heard this statement, but Bill, who heard this statement, was not angry, but invited his wife to play with other men, as long as he did not see her that way. The next day, when Bill was hunting, Isabel and David immediately went into action, doing the activities they wanted. However, after completion, Isabel apparently only gave David 1 star, because David only lasted a few minutes. In the afternoon, Isabel has a male guest whose name is Lucas. Apparently Lucas is Isabel's stepson, or the son of her ex-husband. From here we know that Isabel previously had a relationship with another man who is the father of Lucas. The purpose of Lucas meeting Isabel was to ask about the inheritance from his father that fell all into Isabel's hands, because the child Lucas was entitled to the inheritance. However, Isabel, who heard it, was not willing to give the inheritance to Lucas, because, from the beginning, Lucas mentally only asked for it. But Lucas threatened Isabel. Lucas brought a file in which Isabel's video with him was in the past. It turns out that Lucas and Isabel have had intercourse. Lucas threatened that he would spread the video if Isabel did not give the inheritance. Then soon Bill came, but Bill, who saw Lucas there, asked Lucas not to rush home and invited Lucas to dinner. That way, when the graveyard night arrived, they were also graveyard night, and here Lucas told his intentions and objectives, who wanted to take his father's inheritance. According to Lucas, all this was unfair, because his mother, who had been married for decades and also gave children, did not get anything, while Isabel, who was only married for a few years, could get everything. Suddenly Isabel immediately explained that Lucas's mother was married for years but did not get anything, because they had divorced, while Isabel got the inheritance, because she was given by her father Lucas, before he died. Bill, who heard the debate, he straightened out the problem. According to Bill, the evidence brought by Lucas was not enough to bring his father's inheritance, because Isabel and Lucas's father had given it without coercion. Lucas, who felt he had no more arguments, he could only be silent and did not move. The next day, Bill, who wanted to get to know his stepdaughter Isabel better, he also took Lucas to hunt in the hills. Meanwhile, Isabel, who was alone in her house, she also returned to invite David, but after finishing, Isabel mocked David because David came out quickly again. In the evening, Lucas and Isabel were seen in the living room, which was still disputing about his inheritance, including Lucas's threat to spread Isabel's video. Then Isabel immediately went into the room and complained to her husband. Bill heard all his wife's complaints. He calmed her down and said that Lucas was just grinding, because Lucas was just a little boy who dared to women. Bill also said that he already had a plan. At a later date, David, who was mocked by Isabel yesterday, he felt unacceptable and wanted to prove that now he could be longer. Then without further ado, and excuse me, David, who saw Isabel finished swimming, he immediately forced Isabel. However, Isabel refused, because at that time her husband was in the house. David, who continued to force Maid Isabel, screamed very loudly, until Bill heard it. Suddenly, Bill immediately checked and brought his gun. Bill, who saw an unpleasant scene. In the end, Bill shot David to make him die on the spot. The opportunity was utilized by Lucas to call the police, but before he had time to call, Lucas was suddenly attacked by Bill from behind, until finally Lucas fainted. In the evening, Bill prepares to go to the city, because he will take care of David's death, and he already has a plan, so that Bill and his wife can get away with the mistake. Meanwhile, Lucas, who just woke up, he was surprised to see himself tied up. Then Isabel came in to see Lucas with the gun used to shoot David. Then, Isabel also attached Lucas's hand to the rifle, so that his fingerprints were detected by the police, as if the one who killed David was Lucas. After that, Isabel untied Lucas and ordered Lucas to bury David's body. Isabel warned Lucas not to do anything to escape, because if he escaped he would deal with her husband, who was a reliable hunter. In a short time, the next afternoon, Bill, who still hadn't come home yet, this time Lucas was a bit naughty. At home, Lucas, who felt depressed, had the intention of finishing off Isabel in order to control his inheritance, but fortunately, Isabel, whose life was almost lost, at that time Bill came and immediately beat Lucas. That way Lucas was immediately tied up again, but this time tied to a pole. Lucas, who had resigned himself, he also said if Bill wanted to finish him off then just do it, but Bill, who heard that, he laughed and said it was Lucas who had to finish him. It turns out that Bill has a severe illness. He chose to be finished so that all the inheritance rights of his father Lucas were given all to Isabel. Meanwhile, Bill will give up all his property to be given to Lucas as a substitute for the inheritance from his father, who has become Isabel's right, then to keep watch if he has let Lucas not do as he pleases to Isabel. Bill also recorded Lucas to make a confession that he had done all this. Then after finishing the recording, Bill also told Isabel to untie Lucas. Then without warning, Lucas immediately shot Bill to death at that time, and Lucas could live freely, with his share of the treasure. But Isabel, who seemed unwilling for her husband to die, was not sincere if her husband's property was given to Lucas. That way, Isabel also had other plans. He told Lucas that he did not want to agree if his husband's property was given to Lucas. Lucas, who heard that statement, then he tried to finish off Isabel, and here Isabel immediately saved herself by throwing herself into the pool. Lucas, who was in a state of anger, he also shot the pool blindly. Until when Lucas was caught off guard, Isabel quickly shot at Lucas from the water until finally Lucas was successfully overthrown. Then later, Isabel immediately contacted the police and reported that her husband had been killed by an unknown person. And this movie was finally finished. Thank you for watching this movie. And see you in the next video.